Hi, let's work through the agency duty of full disclosure.
Full disclosure. The duty of full disclosure means that any information known must be disclosed to the principal. Take a situation where a house is listed for $50,000 higher than any similar houses that have sold according to sales statistics. If the broker and sales associates or broker associates working as the subagent of the broker is working for the potential buyer, then the licensee would be bound by duty to inform this fact to the buyer, even if that means the buyer losing interest in the sale and the licensee losing out on the commission. The duty of full disclosure is unique to the single agent relationship. Full disclosure, being an informant. As far as the duty of full disclosure, I must tell you, this duty to me is kind of what makes real estate fun. Let's say you're working with a buyer in a single agency capacity to try to secure a house for that buyer. And you happen to be talking to a listing agent who is not from your brokerage about a listing that they have. Now you're going to go out of your way to ask them a lot of questions to find out as much as possible about the property itself and honestly, also why the person is selling. Your job is to find out as much as possible that benefits your buyer. The seller's motivation to sell can alter the buying strategy that you use to assist your buyer in the purchase. For example, I was doing a deal for a buyer. We had been looking all over town for a property and wanting the seller to help pay for some of the closing costs. Now, depending on the market, whether it's a buyer's market or seller's market, getting the seller to pay closing costs can either be easy or hard. The market that I was working in at that time was a seller's market, so it was more difficult. Sellers that have a lot of buyers to choose from are less motivated to help with the closing costs. But I needed the seller to help as it meant less money that my buyer was required to bring to closing. When we were looking at the property, my buyers and I noticed that the property was already listed at a price that just probably was not going to hold up in an appraisal. Frankly, it was listed too high. The appraisal price was important because my buyer was using a loan to secure the property. However, my buyers really liked this particular house. So I'm talking to the listing agent, trying to figure out how in the world we can get the seller to bring the price down and agree to pay closing costs. In my conversation with this agent, whom I'm speaking with about the seller's property, I find out that the sellers are in a real bind. They need to get this property sold ASAP. You see, I learned that these sellers were in the middle of a divorce. They did not have the money to move on without selling the house. It was very apparent from my conversation with this listing agent that their own situation was getting more urgent as they were having more difficulty cooperating in this home ownership living situation that they were stuck in. Working in the single agency capacity for my buyer, I went back to my buyer and informed them of the situation. My buyer was able to then take that information and risk making an offer. Again, this is where your broker is going to teach you to get everything in writing to make sure that you have proof that you have properly informed your buyer of facts. And in this case, the fact that if the buyer or the seller actually accepted the buyer's offer, they were going to be buying the home, but at a higher price than what they really wanted to. So my buyers made an offer higher than what they really wanted to pay for the home. They did it gambling that the lender would refuse the deal based on an appraisal. I made sure the buyers understood that they would be stuck at that price if anything went wrong about my estimation on the appraisal price. This meant that my buyers were risking paying more for the house than what they wanted to. They also had to risk actually paying for appraisals and inspections. So if everything fell apart, they would be out of cash. But I was also told that the sellers had turned down other offers and were stuck on getting an offer at that price. So my buyers and I gambled that when a lender refused the higher price, the sellers would see the reality of the market and then agreed to drop to the appraised amount, along with paying the closing cost of my buyer. It was a huge gamble, not how I normally structure a deal. Never had before and never have since. And we did it based on the information that the other agent probably didn't have the legal right to share. She should have kept that information and about their personal divorce situation confidential. In the end, the house didn't appraise, and as planned, the sellers agreed to a big reduction in sale price to meet the appraisal. My buyers got their home and with the closing costs paid by the seller. I share this story to emphasize to you that although you can take advantage of an agent breaking license law, please don't be that other agent. Full disclosure.